Hello everyone, I'm Jordana Van of Ravenlight Holistic Healing and welcome to Mouse as a Spirit Guide. Now I have two mouse videos, Mouse as a Totem and Mouse as a Spirit Guide. This here is the video that you want if you've never really been drawn to mice or had a lot of experiences with them, but mouse is suddenly showing up in various ways. If you do feel like mouse has been a pretty regular visitor in your life, or you're a big fan of mice, you'll want to watch my video, Mouse as a Totem, Personality Characteristics and Life Path Challenges. And remember, there is a complete alphabetized library of all my videos on my website, www.ravenlightholistichealing.com, making it super easy to see if I've made the video of greatest interest to you. Also, if you enjoy my work, please consider becoming a channel member. Channel member contributions are one of the things allowing me to now use more of my time to make videos for you. So this is the most meaningful way that you can show your appreciation. And membership comes with some specific perks depending on which tier you choose. Right now, I am only accepting video requests from second and third tier channel members. So if you want me to make a video about your totem or spirit guide, that's how you do it. If you'd like more information about what's included with each tier of membership, just click the join button next to the subscribe button, and that'll get you started. If you can't see the join button, which will happen if you're using an Apple device to watch this, I provide super quick, easy device-specific directions on my website for how to make the join button visible. Just go to the video description and the link will be right there at the top. It only takes a few seconds. And if you want to be notified every time I make a new video, make sure that you subscribe, then click the little bell icon next to the subscribe button and then click all. So let's get started, shall we? So first and foremost, mice are often a message that something that you perceive as a problem in your life is not what it seems. In other words, whatever you think is wrong, you're off the mark. Or the issue is a lot more complicated than the one factor that you've decided must be at fault. Mice work behind the scenes in the dark, hidden places, and they're often responsible for problems that we wouldn't normally look at and think, oh, yep, that's totally the work of a mouse. For example, during World War II, the Germans hid their tanks in fields near the front lines. When the tanks were needed, only a third of them were functional and no few of them failed on the way to battle. Some of them even caught fire. Today, looking at a mass engine failure like that, most of us would first think that there was some kind of a design flaw in the tank engine or that something was wrong with the fuel. Nope. Field mice chewed through the wiring, and so the Allies may very well have won the war because of mice. Appliance fires are often the work of mice for the same reason. It's not an electrical malfunction, it's that mice were chewing through the wire casings and insulation for material to use in their nests. Similarly, if you're suddenly noticing that your heating bill is skyrocketing, it might not be that your electric company is suddenly overcharging you, but that mice have chewed up and carried off chunks of the insulation in your walls or attic. You guys have probably heard of Occam's razor, which basically means that the most likely explanation is probably to blame for your present issue. When mouse is around, Occam's razor does not apply. Whatever the issue is, it's probably not even remotely the thing you would think of as being the source of the problem. So I'm going to share an example from my own life here, since mouse is a pretty regular visitor. One day we noticed that our front door was sticking. Pretty soon we couldn't open it at all. The wall above the door began to crack and the floor in the entryway started to sink. The floor in my home office, which shares a wall with the entry, started sinking as well. This was obviously a foundation issue, or so we thought. Our house was built by a guy who actually lost his builder's license for doing shoddy work, and there isn't a right angle in the place. So we are pretty accustomed to difficulties arising due to design flaws or substandard construction. We were sure that we were going to have our house jacked back up and a crumbling foundation repaired to the tune of only God knew how much money. And so we started calling foundation repair companies to come out and give us their opinions and estimates. And mice started falling from the freaking sky. We have two enthusiastic cats, so some of the mice went on to their great reward after acting as messengers, while some we did manage to get away from the kitties and take outside. But they were everywhere, in my pantry, in my closet, scurrying down the hall. At one point, I picked up what I thought was a cat toy, and it squeaked and shot off across the kitchen floor when I screamed and dropped it in shock. After the fourth or fifth mouse, I looked at my husband and I said, you know what? I think we are missing something here. We've had visits by this point from several companies who talked about installing cross beams and repouring the concrete on our porch and all other manner of supposed fixes, all for an exorbitant amount of money. But none of this felt right. And with all the mice showing up, I knew not to trust any of them, no matter how panicked I was getting about our sinking floor. Finally, I found a company that felt good. And Mouse had been right. Shockingly, it wasn't the foundation itself that was flawed, but that the house hadn't been properly sealed around the foundation. So when I watered my plants on the front porch, as I enthusiastically did several times a week, the water seeped into our crawl space and rotted out our floorboards. Our front door was sinking because water had rotted the subfloor, not because the foundation had been incorrectly laid. But wait, there's more. Remember, when Mouse is around, there are likely to be all kinds of things going on that you never would have guessed. The tremendous amount of water in the crawl space wasn't just due to poor sealing combined with a lot of rain or my enthusiastic plant care, but to some ridiculous redneck-esque plumbing hacks by our criminal builder. Our main plumbing line was a garden hose, and as garden hoses eventually do, it had begun to crack and leak. This was discovered by the crew who arrived to jack up our front door and rebuild our subfloor. This got us looking for more leaks due to substandard plumbing fixtures, and yep, we found some. So we wound up with both a plumbing company and a foundation company under the house fixing stuff, and neither of those issues had anything to do with what we had first diagnosed as the problem. Thank you, Mouse. If Mouse hadn't arrived, we might have spent nearly $15,000 having work done that wouldn't actually have fixed the issue. It is worth noting here that in the Chinese zodiac, 2020 was the year of the rat, but the Chinese word for the animal is actually shu, which means rodent. Many Chinese actually refer to this year as the year of the mouse. I'm not going to be too detailed here because I don't want the YouTube gods to change how this video is labeled. But think about 2020. What a year of chaos. No one knew exactly why or how the big issue started, and we still don't know. The medical intervention that was developed to fix the problem hasn't fixed the problem, very likely because important aspects of the problem are not yet understood, and they aren't being understood because they aren't the sort of things that you would usually associate with this kind of problem. Many of the things that are going to have to be done to get us back on track in a healthy way over the next few years are probably going to surprise us because we never could have anticipated them. That's because Mouse is at the helm, and nothing Mouse does is straightforward or obvious. So if Mouse is showing up in your life and you're dealing with something you perceive as a problem, whatever you think the answer is, dig deeper. Get out a fine-tooth comb and look at possibilities you never would have considered. For example, Mouse loves to show up when we are having issues with our weight. We think the problem is that we're not eating right or exercising enough, but instead it's a self-esteem issue we are failing to acknowledge. Our bodies tend to look the way that we feel about ourselves. So if we feel crummy about who we are, we tend to look in ways we perceive as crummy. Or there may be some weird mineral imbalance we've never thought of. Again, if the answer seems obvious, you're probably on the wrong track. Next, we need to talk about mice and loneliness. Mice are communal creatures. They love to play together, and they're happiest at sleeping in piles of other mice, an arrangement called huddling. If left alone, they rapidly become stressed and depressed. If you've been especially depressed, it's a good bet that you're lonely or suffering from a lack of physical intimacy. And if you're thinking, well, yeah, there's nothing I can do about that, you've got another think coming. When we are lonely, there are usually a couple of internal issues at work that, when confronted and resolved, bring the right people into our lives. First, you may simply feel that you don't deserve friends. I run across this all the time. When this is the case, you either aren't going to make friends or you're going to sabotage the situation with friends in ways that make you feel that you've hurt them or let them down to prove to yourself what a terrible, undeserving person you are. Second, you may be afraid to be your true self with people. When we're afraid to be who we really are, we often manifest isolation because this is simply easier than eternally pretending to be who we are not. So here, the work is in becoming so loving and so accepting of ourselves that we feel safe just being ourselves around others, knowing that if they don't like us, it doesn't actually matter because we like ourselves. Third, you may simply be expecting that you won't like anyone that you meet. You may think other people are judgy or boring or small-minded, or that they won't be anything like you or like what you like. With this in mind, you tend to look for areas of difference with people instead of similarity, and you keep yourself apart from people with whom you could really have fun. Fourth, there may be a really great activity out there that you've wanted to do and where you could meet people, but you've made a bazillion excuses for why you can't or shouldn't do it. You're lonely because you're meant to meet people doing that activity and you can't let yourself do it. There are many other possibilities here, but these are the most common. If you're lonely, you have the power to do something about it. You've just got to be willing to introspect and then do the hard work of changing the limiting beliefs you discover. Also, because mice are communal creatures, if you've been thinking about getting a roommate and mouse shows up, that's usually a heck yes from the universe. One caveat here. When the universe tells us to do something, this isn't always because that thing is going to feel good. The universe tells us to do what will be good for us in the long run, not necessarily what's going to be comfortable. So you might get a roommate and they are hell on toast. But dealing with their shenanigans teaches you some incredible, much-needed life lessons you couldn't have learned otherwise. Being a symbol of confusion and chaos, sometimes Mouse's messages lead us to places that we initially think we really, really don't want to be. But this is for our benefit. We just have to surrender and trust the process. We don't really have another choice anyway. So we've just talked about how loneliness is often at the root of our depression when Mouse is around. But there are a couple of other mouse-related factors that could also be at issue when you're depressed and receiving mouse visits. And remember, it's entirely possible that more than one of these is the problem. The first of these has to do with one's home. Mice are always nesting. Always, always, always. They are always chewing things to bits to add to their nests, and they are always rearranging those nests. Mice without access to nesting materials quickly become depressed. So ask yourself, how do you feel about your home situation right now? Is your home a comfortable place? Do you enjoy being there? Is it decorated in the way you would wish? Or does your house feel stressful or run down and unattractive? Are there home improvement projects you desperately wish that you could do, but you can't? Are you wanting your own house, but you're not able to have it just now? If Mouse is around and this is true, your mental health is probably being affected. You either need to find a way to make changes to your house situation in ways that make you happy, or you need to genuinely accept things as they are right now, knowing that when the situation is supposed to change, the universe will support you. In addition to nesting, mice are super active in other ways. They love to play and run and climb and even swim. If you're depressed and you aren't getting any physical exercise, it's time to get up and get moving. Take a walk, go to the gym, dance, do hopscotch, whatever. Mice who don't exercise become stressed and depressed in short order. It's no different for people. Our lymphatic systems, which help clean the toxins out of our blood, operate via movement and breathing. If we don't breathe well, which most of us don't, and we don't move, toxins will build up in our bodies, and these directly affect our mental health. Exercise is also good for our cardiovascular health, our hearts. And if we're doing muscle building exercises, muscle burns more calories than fat, so your metabolic function is better and you feel better. I'm a fitness instructor, so I get to see in both myself and my students what exercise does for your sense of well-being. Exercise actually releases feel-good chemicals into your bloodstream. So simply by moving, you feel better about yourself and your life. I actually teach a 30-minute spin class once a week that I market as a midweek attitude adjustment because that's exactly what it does. The most important thing to remember here is that if you don't like it, you won't keep doing it. So pick something that you enjoy doing. Some movement is better than no movement. So start small if needed. Another way in which mice are super active is their chewing. Mice are always chewing. This is a consequence of their continual seeking of nesting material. They will make a nest out of just about anything. But it's also because their teeth grow nonstop throughout their lives. And if they don't wear them down through chewing, they'll die. Metaphysically, chewing in animals is linked to chewing things over in humans, to constantly breaking down mental concepts and breaking down situations into their component parts in order to understand them. We chew our food so that it can be swallowed and digested. It's the same on a mental level. You think and think and think about something so that it can be processed and that information put to good use. If mice are showing up and you're depressed, it may be that you're bored out of your mind. There's nothing stimulating your mind, nothing to expand your understanding, no problems to solve. In which case, find something that will get your mental wheels turning. Take a class, learn a new language, read some new books. Do something to get out of the mental rut in which you've been. Or, mouse may indicate that you've just been worrying and aren't coming to any useful conclusions. It's up to you to ask yourself which option it is and to take appropriate action. I will say that worry never solves anything, especially when mouse is around. Whatever you're afraid is going to happen is probably not going to happen, and whatever does happen is going to be something you never would have thought of and could not possibly plan for. So your best bet is to just let go, live your life, and trust that whatever happens, you'll somehow know exactly what to do. Another message represented by that chewing has to do with faith in oneself. Mice may be tiny, but they can cause massive amounts of damage simply by chewing through whatever interests them. And mice can chew through just about anything, given sufficient time. They will also eat just about anything, which is why, despite the fact that they are one of the most preyed upon animals in the world, they continue to proliferate. A handful of mice can also contaminate an entire warehouse of food supplies with their chewing, nesting, and droppings. For such defenseless little creatures, they pose a major threat. More, they're extraordinarily clever, as we know from classic studies such as mice learning to run a maze or operate a device to dole out treats. No matter how insignificant you feel, mouse would tell you that you have what it takes to do whatever you want if you commit to it. Think of Disney. For a company that first gained popularity through a cartoon about a mouse, they now run the entertainment world. Disney owns just about everything these days, and people continue to pay exorbitant prices for Disney paraphernalia, movies, and vacation experiences because they have such a desirable product. Whatever you want to do, do it. Mice are extraordinarily versatile, and as a spirit guide, they often point to the development of abilities you never thought you could possess. Your faith in yourself and your limiting beliefs about how people perceive you are likely to be your only obstacles. Something to keep in mind here, however. Mice are successful because they are small and clever and work in the shadows and hidden places. This can translate to doing a lot of your work behind the scenes, maybe making intelligent use of loopholes and lawyers, maybe making some backroom deals. This isn't a bad thing, but there's a fine line to walk here. If what you're doing is actually illegal, there's a good chance you're going to get caught and really pay for it. Covert activities will generally serve you, but don't delude yourself about their legality or the people you're getting into bed with. Mice have poor vision and rely on their sense of smell, the sensitivity of their whiskers, and their hearing to provide them with information about situations, locations, and other mice. No matter how good a deal looks or seems on paper, or how trustworthy a person seems, don't trust looks alone. If the situation doesn't feel good or you have some reservations you just can't dismiss, get out of there. Now, even though mice are referred to as hardy due to their ability to survive by eating just about anything, including each other, and to exist in most places humans have colonized, they are actually quite fragile. They are extremely heat sensitive, far more so than most other animals. At 98.6 degrees, mice will die. Their tails, which provide them with a sense of balance that makes them such successful jumpers and runners on narrow surfaces, also help them dissipate heat, but they are extremely sensitive to pain. A mouse's eyes are vulnerable to light. Bright light is not only painful, but can cause permanent eye damage. Their vision is not particularly good, which is why they make up for it with excellent hearing that allows them to detect sounds in the ultrasonic range. However, loud, high-pitched sounds are tremendously stressful to mice, and prolonged exposure will actually result in seizures. The mouse also has a superb sense of smell. Scent marking and a mouse's individual odor are one of the mouse's most significant ways of communicating. Mice urinate in particular places to demonstrate that the territory belongs to them, and a mouse that smells unfamiliar will tend to be regarded as an enemy and attacked. This is one of the reasons that one should never, ever handle baby mice. When they're returned to the mother smelling like a human, the mother will either not recognize them and kill them, after which she'll eat them, or she'll be so stressed by the human scent that the same outcome will occur. Even changing a pet mouse's bedding too often, continuously replacing something they've marked with their scent with something that smells like you or the packaging in which it came, will stress it out tremendously and place it on the defensive. What we are talking about here is a critter who is extraordinarily sensitive to its environment and who tends to have violent emotional reactions when it is exposed to stimuli outside its comfort zone. For this reason, sometimes when mouse shows up, we're becoming aware that we're acting a bit like a lunatic. We feel annoyed all the time, or overwhelmed, or we just want to hide under the bed covers and not talk to anyone. We notice we're snapping at friends or at our spouses, or especially our children. We're getting migraines, or our ears ache. What mouse is telling you is that at this time, you are manifesting an acute sensitivity to your environment and the people in it. And the best thing for you to do is get as much time in peaceful, comfortable, calm conditions as you can. Trying to keep pushing yourself to remain in these environments or around these people is going to either damage your health, cause you to blow up in epic fashion, or both. This isn't likely to last, thank goodness. Unless you've always been the kind of person who's been this level of environmentally or energetically sensitive, it's probably just a phase. And the best thing you can do is just be self-aware and do the things that calm you down until it passes. Sometimes this sort of thing happens when the planets move into different astrological signs and align with a challenging placement in our personal chart. Once the planets move into the next sign, things get back to normal. So there's a delightful little story about how the mouse became the first animal of the Chinese zodiac. Now, keeping in mind, the word we're talking about is shu, which means rodent. So sometimes we're talking about the rat being first, but it is equally true to say the mouse. So when the Jade Emperor told all of the animals that he had decided to mark time with 12 placements that would represent a cycle of years, he arranged a race, and the first 12 creatures to cross the finish line would be included in the zodiac in order of their arrival. Mouse and cat, who were the best of friends, set out together and were making fantastic time when they came to a river they couldn't cross on their own. Luckily, Ox was just about to cross the river, and despite wanting to win himself, Ox agreed to carry them across, which says something about ox people, doesn't it? While they were being ferried across, the exhausted cat fell asleep. Mouse looks at his sleeping friend, does a few calculations, and pushes cat into the water, telling Ox that he hadn't heard anything at all when Ox asks about the infuriated spluttering and splashing coming from just behind them. When they approached the shore, Mouse leapt from Ox's back and crossed the finish line first. The poor soggy cat swam for all he was worth, but arrived in 13th place, earning nothing, while his best friend took first place and all the glory. This, the Chinese tell us, is why cat and mouse are no enemies. This little story aside, mice are fiercely territorial little creatures. If you house two males together, they will invariably kill each other, and they are happy to eat each other if no other food is available. It's safe to say that mice look out for number one in some pretty dramatic ways. When mouse is around, it's often the case that the only way to attain what you want is to put yourself first, and very likely tick off some other people. This may look ruthless, but in life, there can only be one winner sometimes. The loser isn't going to be a happy camper, but that doesn't mean that you weren't meant to get what you want. So if there's a goal that's important to you, mouse would tell you to do what is required to win, keeping in mind that legal ways are best, and to just accept that upsetting people is probably going to be part of the process. When you've gotten what you want, you can share the spoils if you feel like it. Now, let's say that your mouse is a lab mouse. While the red-eyed white albino mouse is the mouse we most often associate with scientific research, other strains with different physical appearances are used. So even if it doesn't look like the classic lab mouse to you, if something about it says lab mouse, go with your gut. Mice are used in experiments because their genome is similar to our own. We can extrapolate from how something affects a mouse, how it's likely to affect a human. Also, mice are cost effective as they are inexpensive to attain and house. And lastly, they multiply quickly, so it doesn't take long to see how any genetic changes you implement will manifest in the next generation. On the sunnier end of the scale, if you've been considering a career in medical science, particularly if you've thought of becoming a researcher, lab mouse would be a strong indicator that this would be a good fit for you. On the other hand, and especially if you have some ethical issues with the use of mice in experiments, lab mouse might indicate that you're feeling a bit like a lab mouse yourself right now. You might feel trapped. You don't feel like you have control over your living conditions or your diet or your schedule or something else critical to your well-being. You may also feel as though people are using you or that you're being told to sacrifice your own health and happiness for the greater good. If this is the case, it's also likely that you've been carrying around a victim mentality for a while, feeling like everyone but you has the power and that you're incapable of attaining what you want. It's a good idea to remember Disney here, a bazillion-dollar company with tremendous power and influence represented by a mouse. You can succeed, and brilliantly. Most of the times, what happens in our lives is a creation of our own beliefs. When we experience victimhood, it is very often true that this is what we expected or thought we deserved, and it's simply a continuation of a pattern that's been manifesting again and again throughout the course of our lives. Not always. Sometimes we're victimized so we can benefit from the experience of transcending what happened to us. But most of the time, we can look back and see that we were stuck because we thought we were supposed to be stuck, that we believed there was no way for someone like us to succeed, or we were afraid of success. Here, lab mouse would be your wake-up call. You are not insignificant, you are not defenseless, and you do not have to sacrifice your own happiness on the altar of the higher good. You are just as important as everyone else. One of my best friends and I got hooked watching Warner Brothers' Animaniacs and Pinky and the Brain when we were 13 years old, and almost 30 years later, we're still referring to each other as Pinky and the Brain. This is actually how we address all our cards and weekly texts to each other. If you're not familiar with the cartoon, Pinky and the Brain are lab mice with some pretty big goals. Every night, Pinky, who's the goofball in the arrangement, asks Brain what they're going to do with the evening, and Brain replies, "We're going to take over the world." That's the kind of attitude you need to be cultivating if you're going to succeed. You need to work through all your beliefs around undeservedness or inability or misfortune and believe that you can do whatever you want, no matter how grandiose it may seem. So I hope this has given you guys some answers to your mouse experiences. Remember that if there's a video that you want to see, become a channel member at the second or third tier and your request will be added to the official video request list from which I draw possibilities for the next video. When I'm ready to make a new video, I'll pick 3 animals from the request list. Third tier members will get to vote on the one they want, and that's the video I'll make next. Right now, third tier members are voting for either jaguar, possum, or monarch butterfly. Quite a collection, huh? I can't wait to see what they choose. Have a wonderful day, everyone. Cheers!